I believe we are live now. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Investing with the Difference. Happy New Year, first of all, to everybody who has been. I think with this 2019 was not a great year for crypto, but I think in terms of how things panned out, in terms of development, in terms of how we are seeing progress happening in the EOS world, I would say it was a great year in my eyes. Of course, I think if you're an investor who is looking for, how this year went by, I think it was pretty much flat. We had a pretty bad ending to 2018 with the bear market, uh, like really impacting all the crypto investments. But I think let's talk about a lot more on what's really happening uh, in general in the blockchain world, and definitely we will talk a lot more about EOS. So I hope that the stream is working. First of all, again, I think we are still trying to fix some of these live streaming issues we had last time. So I don't know if so. Do add your comments if you think that you are not able to hear me, or if this is not working. So let's get going. So again, I think if you're joining just now, so happy New Year to everybody. And do let us know if you have any questions. We will take the questions as we go along. Um, so, what is really happening? I think in terms of the market itself, let's have a quick look. So, if you see, Bitcoin has been kind of stable around 7,000. We did see a pretty good rally in 2019 from lows of $3,000 to all the way up to $14,000. And but I think we have now corrected heavily from there and establishing around $7,000 mark. How does this work for future? We don't know, like how this can uh, really change into a bull market again. We don't know. If you see from Bitcoin perspective, it is still way above its lows, while most of the altcoins they are suffering. And that's the same thing which is impacting, I think, EOS and other coins. uh, Even I think last 24 hours or so we saw a big dip and then again a recovery from there. So it's a pretty volatile market as usual, and we do expect this in crypto world. And I think the volumes are not that big anymore. First of all, as we always question what is the real volume, what is not. So that those are the kind of things that I would say we will never know. So let's not worry about price. I think that was never the intention. And again, while we are on this page, when we are looking at price, I keep reminding you that anything which I say in this video or whatever we discuss is not an investment advice. We are not qualified to give any investment advice. So just treat this as an information education around what's going on in EOS world, and do not take actions based on this discussion. Now let me see. I thank you for your comments of all confirming that you can hear all right. So that's great. Now let's look at the blocktivity. I think this is something which is always interesting for EOS, and we are seeing that there's a lot more activity now happening. So I think this was discussed earlier in some of our videos, but the record we made was 74.5 million transactions in a single day, which is like way high as compared to any other blockchain which has ever even targeted. Forget about achieving those results. I'm talking about even targeting those numbers is has been a big challenge. So with that in mind, we need to also understand that it's not going to be easy for any other blockchain to capture this kind of performance, and that's still the strength of yours. By the way, as you know, we are still not using the full network potential. So a lot of people must be asking, while we have this high CPU utilization, why we are still not hitting the full network utilization. And that is where I think there were some flaws in Rex model which are being fixed. Block one has come out with I think, let me see where the new resource model. So I think Dan had published ideas. Even the code is being written for this particular changes. And I think we are seeing that the new resource allocation model is being proposed, which will help us unlock this unused bandwidth. So why is this unused? The reason it is because if you are staking your EOS today and you are not really doing any transactions, nobody can use that particular allocation which is going to you. And that is one reason why um, I think more than 50% of network resources are going unused. And that is main reason why the new resource model is being proposed. And this will not change much from token holders who are going to continue to stake to Rex. But for the dApps, they will not be able to uh, directly stake and get the resources. They will have to go through this CPU rental model only. And for easy introduction, what Block One has proposed is that you can have some part of the bandwidth allocated in this, while the current model of Rex can operate in parallel. So a lot more discussion is happening. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that while we are hitting this 74.5 million transactions, we can at least double it by unlocking unused resources. And that is, I think, is very exciting. Then the next thing which I believe is exciting is, of course, all of you know that EOS 2.0 is coming. And EOS 2.0, as it is implemented, it will give us, for the same resources, for the same CPU, we will be able to do many more transactions. So I think this is what we are looking forward to in 2020. Hopefully, we will hit even more, like in a number of transactions. Now, again, I know that a lot of people have concerns around IDOS and all these projects, which is a questionable thing, whether it's the thing which is really ruining EOS, or whether it's bad for the system. I would say it's a lot of people have been proposing that these kind of apps should be banned, or this is not healthy. My question to them would be that do you really want a kind of a censored network? Because the whole chaos which we saw in last 2 3 months, this is the sign of what a decentralized system looks like. This is the exactly what we expect in a decentralized world. While there are a lot of other chains, there are a lot of other people within the EOS community are talking about not allowing these kind of things. And that's exactly what centralization means, because it's a subjective decision for you or me to say that I don't like IDOS. Like we had this discussion on Twitter recently, and I said that we had a similar situation in December 2018 when the casino bots were running and they were mining their casino tokens, and there were like hundreds of copycats which were coming up. And really, that time the CPU was killed. I remember that I was not able to make any transactions. Nobody remembers that, because at that time the real usage of EOS was very, very low, other than casinos, and nobody bothered about it. So now it's also a sign that people are complaining that EOS is heavily used. So that's another interesting thing which I'm noticing. And at that time, we did not even have Rex. At this moment, currently, we have Rex, which is operational. Um, and we have most of the apps paying for the transactions. So user does not even have to pay transactions. We have wallets which can pay for your transactions, and you don't have to go and spend your own CPU. We are actually, I am personally running many accounts which have zero CPU, and I'm able to do many things just because of the ecosystem which is built around these new functionalities and new features. So as I said, there's a lot of improvements. So if I compare the CPU issues of 2018, that is end of 2018, and CPU issues of end of 2019, 1 year later, what is the comparison? I think Rex is the biggest reason, and the 1.8 feature of apps being able to pay for your CPU. I think these two things combined has given us a capability where almost 99% of the people are able to operate on EOS at this moment, even with a heavy usage. And that is, I think, a lot of progress in 1 year. And as we discussed, there are many changes happening. Even on Rex, I would definitely go into this detail because this is something which is new. And as you see, that every month, at the start of the month, when the Rex unlocks, that time, all the apps look for leasing out these tokens. And when they borrow, a huge amount of funds come into this. Now, on the December 31st, we saw 28,100 EOS, and on the January 1st, we saw almost 20,000 EOS going into the Rex funds. So what big whales are doing is they would submit their tokens into Rex right before this peak, and then they can withdraw after 4 or 5 days when the Rex matures. After 5 days, you can withdraw, and then you can use the rest of the days when the returns are very, very low to go and mine EIDOS token or something else, whatever they want to do, or they can lease out to somebody else. So to remove this kind of issue, we have a new proposal where uh, actually EOS Nation has been working on it, and this was the idea which was proposed and actually approved right now. So it's already implemented on the network, and we now have a 30-day uh, slow release of the Rex income. So when the Rex accumulates certain income, that is slowly released into the pool instead of rewarding it immediately. So what that encourages is that people who are not currently uh, like into the Rex, they can actually come into Rex and enhance the liquidity when there is these kind of big events, when the more and more funds are coming in. Secondly, there are people, the whales, who are probably, or even like an average person who is probably withdrawing the funds after earning one big reward, that is the CPU reward at the start of the month. They, if they withdraw, they will not make that return, which is actually fair, and it makes perfect sense. And the other biggest change, which I have been calling for, the day when we first logged up on November 1st, this was the thing which I really was surprised. And I think this is something which was a big issue, that we had a threshold at which point the Rex was locking up. And it was definitely arbitrary, but we were explained by Block 1 that there were risks if we do not have this threshold in the code, that your funds can be lost forever. And that's why I think this threshold was maintained. But now the fix has been implemented that this threshold can go to 90%, and which will resolve a lot more issues, because now the Rex, I don't think personally that in January now, in the new year, Rex will ever lock up with these new changes. So even with the workaround, even before we go into the new resource model which is being proposed of the rental market, which will unlock our further more resources which are available today, I would say even before that, with these fixes which we are seeing, we should not have any lockups anymore. We should have Rex available easily. And the interesting thing is, even after the initial frenzy, we are seeing a pretty reasonable price of Rex right now. For one EOS payment, you can get 921 EOS staked to yourself, which is huge. I think most of the people, if they spend this one EOS and they get 921 EOS CPU, you can do multiple transactions. Like I believe 921 gives you almost uh, 10 millisecond, if I'm not wrong. But anyway, I think it depends on how much each transaction costs, but I would say you can do significant number of transactions for an average user. Of course, if you're a heavy user, you will have to pay more. And for regular one or two or three transactions per day, when you're just transferring wallets or you're doing some basic transactions, you don't even need 921 EOS. You can probably do get along with 100 or 200 EOS stake. And remember, yeah, wallets which are like EOS Authority, like Blocks.io, there are many, many wallets now are offering you free transactions anyway in terms of CPU. So you do not need to even use your own CPU most of the time. So these are the benefits. I would say this fix is very critical. Again, a lot of work is being going on in the background to even resolve the temporary issue while we are talking about the next level of issues, which is kind of, I think, unlocking the resource potential. One more thing, I would like to give it a shout out to EOS Nation, because if you have not noticed, EOS Nation is now in the top 5. This is one of the indie BPs which is not backed by exchanges, which is not backed by big whales in China. They have adapted to this whole new model of reward paying proxies and doing collaboration with the Chinese BPs, and they are coming back. And the reason why I'm highlighting them is, as you see, they are one of the most active BPs right now in top 21. We always have been interacting with them as in this community, in the English speaking community, and they're very accessible, very, very good BP, as we have been voting for in investing with the difference also. And now that they have used this opportunity in the new landscape, they have gone into top 5, they have shown that it is possible to go this path and make a difference. So that is another thing which I don't think we discussed last time, but I would like to congratulate them and give a shout out to them for really putting an effort. While I think again, it's a question. Now I would like to highlight, like, most of the people here, like, even the investing with a difference proxy has shrunk. We had, at one point we had 5 million tokens, and now I don't know, like, I think it's just 1.4 million tokens. So you can see a lot of people care about rewards. So as I discussed last time, I have been helping value proxy. This is something which we created, which is very, very objective metrics for uh, issuing rewards. So basically, we are allowing any BP to register, but they have to meet the minimum standards of having a good API, meeting the performance standard. We also follow up on important multisigs and upgrade proposals like Rex and so on. If anybody is not voting on them, we will not allow them in this proxy. So we have created this reward proxy. But again, you see that most of these reward proxies are on the top, and which is the new model, which I would say is but how the mainnet has evolved. And if means I still don't believe in it, to be frank, let me be very clear. Even though I'm supporting value proxy, I still believe that this is nothing. Like, again, let's go back to the market, and you see how much prices move in a single day. Like, we're talking about 7 to 10% movement in every single day in crypto world. And if you're chasing these 1 2 3% yields on rewards over the whole 1 year, I don't know what you're trying to achieve as an investor. So a lot of people justify that, it's investors wants yield. I don't really agree with that. So while I don't agree, but because the token holders have spoken, we have to accept that in a depause. So we did see that more and more reward proxies are coming. Uh, Now this is where I think it's a matter of whether you like it or not. You have to accept what the market is telling you, what the depots and this decentralized community is telling you. And this is exactly the same reason why I don't have anything against IDOS or any of these mining tokens, because a lot of people talk about, oh, we should ban this IDOS token, or it's not good for the system. They are doing exactly same thing as voter rewards. So if you support voter rewards, if you are staking to any of these proxies which are giving you rewards and voting for this top 21, then you are already doing the same thing which IDOS is doing. That means you're trying to get some yield out of this network, and that's what IDOS is doing. IDOS is simply asking you to use your CPU to mine this token and get some cash against your CPU. So it's the same thing. They're just trying to give you yield, and that's what this whole thing is about. But in the process, we are finding these issues very fast. We are fixing these Rex issues. We have closed many loopholes. So it's a very, very positive thing for the whole ecosystem right now. So anybody who's telling you that, oh, EOS is in a bad state, EOS is not working, I think they just don't know what's going on. Means we are working on so many apps. We are working with some of the biggest apps in this EOS world, and look at the number of transactions. We are actually able to do those transactions. Yes, it costs much more than what it used to cost before November. But now that is one point I would like to highlight. So we did do analysis. So Blockstart, which is our accelerator, which we have been working with a lot of enterprise customers, we have been doing analysis, and we have calculated, even when we were at the peak CPU cost, using Rex, you can pay for transactions, and you paid for 0.0002 per transaction. That's the dollar amount you're paying. It is still the cheapest blockchain. And again, this is only when you use Rex. If you have your own tokens, you can still stake it and you can have free transactions. So now for the apps, if you're building a business case, if you're really using blockchain for real need and not just for the sake of using blockchain, if you're not able to pay this amount today, when we are still yet to go into scaled mode, when we are yet to see the best potential of the blockchain come out, then I don't know how they are ever going to compete. So it's a matter of the competitive apps are able to go ahead and make a difference even in the current situation. People who are not able to afford these kind of transactions, I would say that they never had a business case to run on blockchain, because you're not creating value. That means, so you can run on other sister chains, you can run on test nets. How would it matter? So I think this is the learning process for dApps. I'm sure a lot of dApps will go to sister chains. There will all other activity will happen. But remember that EOS mainnet is backed by a value, and you need to justify why you need to run on a multi-billion-dollar chain if you cannot even generate your this kind of revenues for your app, where you are not able to even pay for such a low transaction fee. So I would not say it is expensive at this moment. And this was the analysis we shared with some of our enterprise customer. And remember, people are still paying a few cents per transaction for Ethereum. Bitcoin has seen in its peak around $50 per transaction kind of fees. I personally have paid those things. So it's a huge progress even before we have reached our peak capacity on EOS. And I think that's something which I don't see why it should be a big concern for most of the apps. So this is something which I wanted to cover about CPU. I think everybody has the same questions, so I just want to make sure we are talking about that. So if you have any other questions in this regard, if you have any comments, please and add it on your on the comment section. Uh, we will try to take the questions here. Let me have a quick look. So there's one question saying, whatever happened to mythical games? As I understood, Mythical Games has raised another round of money, and they got some more investments from other VCs. So they seem to be progressing well. Personally, I have not tracked where they are in terms of launching and using EOS. So that's something which I'm not really tracking. But I did see a news item that they have been doing well in terms of raising next rounds, and that seems exciting. And let's see what comes out of them, and if they really end up deploying on EOS. Again, you need to understand that just relying on one or two of these apps, people change. Like it's a startup world. 99% of the apps they which start, they pivot or they shut down. So this is how any other world is, and blockchain is even more difficult because it's always changing technology, always evolving. We are in a very very early stage, so you will see these things happen all the time. And I would not go and chase one or two projects. I think we are seeing a lot of progress happening in many many different areas and many different projects. But again, as I said, I don't have any more information on this. Do let me know if somebody else knows what's going on, so do share with us, and we can discuss that. um, so there is another question coming, with some dApps leaving and publicly shaming cartels and high CPU cost among main reason. Do you still think EOS has a good development community? What I would like to highlight is, yes, dApps were leaving because they could not afford CPU. Yes, there were issues around Rex locking up, which is now fixed. I don't think Rex will lock up anymore. I think every new technology has its own fair share of challenges. People who are continuously complaining, I would not call them good developers, because that means they cannot adapt, and they are like, this happens everywhere. Where like any new technology which comes, it keeps disrupting others. And in a decentralized world, you will see more and more faster disruptions, because nobody has built a moat. We are talking about the same blockchain. Everybody gets impacted by one new app coming in and being successful impacts everybody else. And this is going to always happen in public blockchains. So if somebody was not prepared for it, I would say this is a lack of vision at their end, rather than, yes, they are trying to shame the cartels. I don't even know why, what it has to do with cartels, what it has to do with the BPs. Like BPs have been doing what they are supposed to do. They are producing blocks. Our performance of blockchain is amazing. They have been continuously improving the performance. That's why we are able to hit these records. Our most of the EOS top producing blocks, even when they have cartels behind them or whatever, which of course we don't like it, because we all of us wanted a great governance, where we have good quality communication tools building from BPs. But that was never part of the code. That was never defined. The votes, the people who are voting for them, they are happy because these block producers are running the network without any issue. We are now more than 1.5 year, and we are hitting new records. We have continuously improved performance. They have, even as we talked about this proposal which EOS Nation put together to change this after testing, within 2 days we got all of it implemented on mainnet. So it was pretty good response from all the top BPs. So I, first of all, there is no relation between the cartel formation and all those things impacting any dApp. dApps should not complain about it, because there is no issue at all. Blockchain is working fine. Whether we like those block producers or not, it's all personal choices. That it's all because DPoS is plutocracy, where token holders decide who should produce blocks, and majority of token holders are in China perhaps, and that's why you see more and more Chinese block producers. This has nothing to do with cartel formation impacting dApps in any form. The second part you're saying is high CPU cost. I think we just discussed this. I don't see this cost being super high. If EOS has to be successful, the cost will go even higher. So this is not the highest cost you will ever see on EOS mainnet if EOS is successful. Think about it. What if EOS token price, which everybody wants, it goes to $100 or $1,000? Won't the CPU cost had gone up by 100 times or 200 times or whatever? So what would happen in that case? Even without any IDOS, if we have a bull run and if EOS price goes up, the cost was anyway going to go up for dApps. So if they don't have a business case, if they cannot create enough economic value using their app, then they should not be running on EOS mainnet. They should look for some cheaper chain, and that's the right thing they are doing. They do not. They There is no right for them to go and uh, complain about mainnet, because that means they are running on $1 billion chain when their app cannot even pay such a small transaction fee. So I think it's a pretty lame excuse by apps. I have seen, like, in startup world, we have seen this happen all the time. It's because we are a public community. We all listen to each other. We created like we gave them a lot of importance, some of these apps and some of these developers. And I think there will be somebody better who will always come across and take the opportunity and run with it. If people who complain, they never win in a technology race. People who adapt and go keep improving, those are the people who win. So yes, I was one of them, because it hurt us. Like in November, it was caught everybody off guard. I was one of them who was complaining about why there are these issues. And but I think it after the initial shock, if you're not going and adapting yourself, I would say that that means you are not ready for the new tech. So again, I don't know if I answer your question, whether it has EOS has good development community. I have no doubt about EOS developer community, because it's amazing. Like the kind of talent I see every day working on EOS, I don't think I have seen anywhere else. Yes, I think Ethereum is still a huge community pool, and there are some great developers. And but I think even the people who are leaving, I think they are going on some sister chains on EOS IO, and I won't call them they are leaving EOS community, because even if they're developing on sister chains, they are still the developers who are building on EOS IO, and it's the same, exactly same kind of platform. It's just where you're running, and that's how the EOS IO platforms will evolve. We will see more and more chains running in parallel. Some will be able to run on mainnet, some may be able to run on sister chains, and so on. That's how this will happen. Now, I have another question I see here is, if the congestion issue resolved, do you think voice will be released on mainnet? Um, I think voice is targeting, let's say, millions and millions of users. They are targeting a super high scale app with kind of, like, maybe everybody is sending a transaction like every second. So it doesn't even make sense for voice to run the whole thing on mainnet. My vision is voice will use EOS accounts as a kind of a glue between voice and rest of the ecosystem, because voice is enabling identity, voice is enabling unique humans, voice is enabling a social media use case which is unique on EOS. And you can use it, will be a overall net positive when they connect EOS account with the voice account, and then they can verify you, and you can use that data or probably build connect other apps. That's my vision. I hope that they do it. I did see some hints about it after B1 June, when Brandon and Dan had given interviews. I hope that they are thinking of it as a platform, not just a single app. From that perspective, it will help mainnet. I never expected them to launch voice on mainnet, but I do expect them to in future. Right now, they have clarified the beta will not be connected to mainnet, so it's just a test. You need to understand that the whatever is launching in February is a beta. It's not a full-fledged voice app, and the tokens will be reset when the mainnet launch, or main, even if not mainnet, if it is, even if it is on their own chain, whenever the main voice launches, which will be out of beta, my assumption is that the tokens will be reset. And now coming back to whether it will, if the congestion is creating the issue, I don't think so. I think there are still ways you can connect back to mainnet. And let me actually go to the voice FAQ. So voice has, by the way, if you have not visited voice site recently, go visit voice site. There are a lot more updates. If you have not requested for beta, do request the access. And they have given some more screenshots exactly how it will work and how it will look. And they have also explained that now you will have these kind of, what is the focus of voice? It's basically identifying individuals and rewarding people for posting. And also, I think the major thing is that you can pay whatever your tokens you earn, you can pay with them. And it's a very similar, like transparent advertising model and so on. I think that those are the kind of things which are the key feature of voice. Now, if you go to FAQs, I think they had mentioned um, that they will be using a purpose-made EOS.io blockchain, and they're saying they would like to see how they can leverage EOS public blockchain. So this is what I would say is how they will connect back into mainnet. It will be mostly about giving value back to mainnet rather than running on mainnet, because running on mainnet doesn't make sense in my eyes. I think that is already clear that they don't intend to do that. And that is, how is that going to be different from IDOS? If voice ends up running on mainnet, we will have exactly same issue with mainnet which we have today. So the value creation for mainnet will not happen by running all the transaction from a huge app onto mainnet, but by creating economic value on the chain. And how do you create economic value of the chain? Is by creating value for the EOS accounts. And that's how the blockchain will be valued. I hope that people understand the distinction between an app running on the mainnet versus app creating value for the mainnet. Means, just like IDOS, which is not creating any value for mainnet, it's running millions and millions of transaction every hour. Um, Ideally, you should be then happy that IDOS is running like that, because it is running so many transactions on mainnet. So that is never a criteria. We don't want voice to run on mainnet, because that will just kill the mainnet performance for other apps, and that is not creating any additional value to EOS mainnet by pushing every transaction into mainnet. So I hope I understood. I'm being very clear. So you need to figure out that what is the value of any, like, what is, if you're trying to value EOS as a token based on which apps are running on it, I would say don't do that. Think of it as what is the ecosystem EOS is creating. So with your EOS account, what else can you do? So think, if voice can give you identity, voice can give you some sort of integration and a platform, and other apps can come and integrate and create more and more economic activity. That's where the EOS valuation will come from. And that's how I see as value creation. Um, all right. So I think, yes, again, coming back to this new year, the way we should think, I would say, yes, 2019 was very challenging. If you are an investor, if you have invested big amount of money into crypto, because of the way market really frustrated everybody, because people were expecting a bull run before the Bitcoin halving, and so, or whatever we call it, halving, or whatever is the right word. So basic idea is that all this speculation is not going to create value. I mean, what it is, it's always about apps, it's about usage, it's about how we are going to see when the kind of apps which really create value will be different from what we are seeing today. Like casinos never created any value, but because you can always run online casinos, people were anyway believing online casinos same as the blockchain casinos. So people were seeing those as great apps 1 year back. So I would say things will evolve, more better and better quality apps will come, and you will forget about these issues when really mature apps who understand the economic value of blockchain use blockchain. And that's where we will see real progress happen. Then there are other questions coming. I see. Have you checked out strong block? How do they affect EOS? I think what if means again, I have not spent a lot of time because there's so many things happening in EOS ecosystem. What I understand strong block is doing is they are creating private blockchains for enterprise users, and that's a great market. If you are like, for example, Wax used strong block to start their chain when they were not yet ready to hire block producers. In that case, Strong Block was running all their chains. So that was a good initiation for Wax without impacting their performance and without worrying about who the block producers will be. They were able to launch on EOS. And so similarly, I believe they are providing custom EOS chains to anybody who needs. And that is always going to be the use case. That is the same for Ethereum. There is a lot of other markets for every blockchain out there, um, but that does not give you new that can do a lot of things, in my view, very similar to what Hyperledger is doing, where what you can do is you can disrupt an existing use case by saving cost running things on blockchain within a single organization, which is a very much a controlled environment. That's how most of these blockchains work when we talk about the private blockchains or commissioned blockchains. The advantage of public blockchain is very different. So whatever strong block is doing, I would say that's a parallel to EOS. It has no direct relationship to what EOS is doing. Because when we said mainnet, mainnet is giving you a public blockchain which is out there in open, run by decentralized entities of like block producers. There's a continuous chain which is never reset since the day it was started, and the length of that blockchain defines how much trust you have in that blockchain, in the data. And then using that blockchain, you're building trustless solutions where you don't care about, you always know that the blockchain is running, and you are going to be able to, whatever is pushed out in open source on that blockchain will be trustworthy just because the data was there on blockchain and it was never messed with. So in a private uh, chain environment, you can never create those use cases because you will have to go through audit process, because you know that it's a commission chain, you know that one single entity owns block prediction, data set, everything. So without going into too much technical details, I would say that these are all parallel use cases of blockchain. Similarly, we are seeing sister chains. Everybody's creating their own environment. You have Wobbly, Telos, Wax. Everybody is trying to define a different level of, decentralization, different level of governance, and they will have their own markets, but nobody can compete with the public blockchain for a trustless solution. That's where the blockchains come into a picture, and that's where I think it mainnet will be still be relevant from that perspective. All right, so I don't know if I covered everything which I had planned, but this is all I think what is happening recently. Come again, I think we, because we are in the new year and actually in the new decade, we need to also understand that there will be a lot more changes happening all the time in how blockchains are viewed. We are seeing more and more education happening in this field. So we are not like more, in the last decade it was a crypto decade, I would call it. And in that crypto decade, everybody saw crypto as a coin and focusing on the tech as if who can make more money using speculation. In the next decade, I think that the app players, the people who are building on top of these blockchains, they should get more attention, because now we are talking about dApps, we are talking about the layer two solutions like liquid apps, we are talking about even like recently I was discussing in one of the channels that what we are working on is layer 3, actually even beyond layer 2. Using this layer 2 tools, how do you abstract out the blockchain from the users? I think that's what the future is. So people will not care whether it's EOS or Telos or whatever. It's about this will be the background where the developers have to worry about those things. The users will not care where on which chain these apps are running, and the apps will create the business, and apps will create the value, and those will be driving the value of the protocol also. Because when you are running $1 billion app, you are able to pay higher transaction fee, and also you need better trust from the block producers, because that means that the value of the token should go up so that it can sustain that value of the application in terms of censorship resistance. Again, sorry, my voice is kind of losing because I'm still recovering from cold over last few days. So if you're not able to hear me clearly, dude, apologize for that. So I would say that it's a matter of, we are, in the last decade we were always worried about the protocol level valuation. I think when I see it today, it's ultimately going to translate in next 10 years, is how the blockchain apps come into existence and how they are valued. So again, I keep giving this example. If you look at Facebook, which is just an app, Facebook is not, they have created their own protocols, they have done a lot of low level work, but ultimately they are using very basic internet protocols and mobile phones and so on, which, and they have created $500 billion worth of value at the app layer. That is what I think blockchain can provide you. And whether the protocols will generate that kind of revenue directly, it will depend on what kind of apps are running. If apps are able to generate revenues, they would not bother about paying any kind of CPU fee. So that's what I think you need to understand. So apps have to really use blockchain for this, for blockchain use case, and not for just for the sake of running it. We got trained wrongly on EOS because we had a lot of free transactions, and because the usage was not much and there was no real economic activity happening. So people got used to that free transactions with, even without staking anything. And that I think was an anomaly. The current situation is not the anomaly. This is how it was always supposed to be. That's how I interpret it. All right, so I don't see any more questions. So let's me have a quick look. So we did talk about one more thing, I think. Okay, so I wanted to show this, which again, this is a lot of things which we have been talking about on Twitter. So if you're following us on Twitter, we do discuss these things. So you know that this is the China Blockchain Research Institute, which comes out with rankings, and it is very interesting to see that through ever since EOS mainnet was launched, it has been on number one. So it jumped into number one as soon as it was launched in June and July 2018, and since then, this research institute has been uh, doing this kind of analysis, and EOS has never dropped from number one. It is losing a few points recently in terms of the total value. You see the numbers going up and down a little bit, but all the other chains are moving up and down. Now, this is the strength, I think, I would say, of EOS in terms of in China. So I don't know if there's a bias there, because of course China is big on EOS. I don't know how they really go about evaluating these projects, but this is the press which is going in China. This is the kind of and it's one of the biggest population and biggest economy. We cannot ignore this. And this is going to really change how people see blockchain. So I don't see why we should worry about it. And one of the biggest reason I like EOS personally is because we are developing on it, and we see so much more we can do in terms of like number of transactions, integration, like even the user accounts, even the capabilities to change the keys. There's so many things which EOS has which no other blockchain has. So in terms of technology, in terms of the capabilities of merging with real world applications, I think EOS is way ahead of others, and that's what excites me. So what will really happen, whether it will translate into real usage, that time will tell. But I think the capability is there, the uh, opportunity is there. That's what I would say. So I think these are some of the things I wanted to talk about. Other than that, I think a lot of people have already seen the block one is now that they are ready for voice launch. They are also doing some additional efforts. They are issuing grants for projects, which is great news. So I hope that other thing which will help this year 2020, I hope to see more active participation from block one into these kind of events in time. Hoping to create more. I think they have been promoting hackathons. And we are also trying to do a hackathon with them, and also they're trying to give these grants to the apps. So hopefully this year will change the way block one gives back to EOS. Voice launch is definitely a big thing, which will bring a lot of promotion, a lot of eyeballs to EOS. So I think 2020 is going to be an exciting year. We do expect much more in terms of how people perceive EOS. And there is a big opportunity here. Either it can be a big failure, after again there will be hype, just like it happened in B1 June, and we will fail, or maybe it is the time and we are ready with more and more apps coming out, more and more maybe voice becoming successful with a lot of marketing which everybody is expecting from B1. All those things I would say is going to define how this 2020 turns out. There's another question on the chat I see is when EOS 2.0. I have been trying to figure that out. I think this is still under testing. The last release candidate which came out from Block One, uh, it was a few weeks back, and that I'm hearing that it is very stable. But again, because it's a big change again, it will need a lot of testing. And once that testing is completed, I'm sure the block producer, just like the Rex changes, which were proposed and they were applied within 2 days, I think this once the testing is completed, when everybody's convinced that this change can go through without any issues, this will happen. I'm hoping that it will happen very soon. Hope if not in months, like not in weeks, at least in a few months. Definitely, I would hope that it doesn't get delayed too much, because it will really help a lot of apps. One more thing, which is a good news I'm hearing, is that there is no need for a hard fork, so it will be easier for block producers to update to EOS 2.0. It's just a code migration, but I think because it's a big change, and it's always about, one thing is you're updating the code, and second thing is enabling those features on mainnet. All those things take time, as we saw with 1.8. So I would say I don't have exact information, but that's a good question, and we'll try to follow up on this with block producers and see what we hear. So this is all I had from my side. If you have any questions, so first of all, thank you for joining. I hope that everybody has a great new year, and like this really changes the perception in next tech, especially because we are at the turn of the decade, and I have big hopes and big plans for this decade of creating new apps myself. We are working on a lot of ideas with our team. Um, Hopefully next time when we talk, I will show you some cool ideas we're working on. We are very close to launching some of these things, and we are still as excited as we could be. And that is something I would like to highlight. Like, it was a great year for building, for the tools which came out, with the progress at the technology level, which EOS has made. I think it's unparalleled. Means I cannot even think of any other blockchain where you have that level of advanced technology, because that you realize only when you are building it. You cannot realize it when you are just investing and listening to the FUD. Uh, so this is something which I would say is I'm most excited about 2020, because we are really coming out with some great products, which are like end user products, which are apps, which are going to change the way you use these kind of blockchain use cases. If you see, I think one of the things which we worked on in 2019, which was moonlighting, I think a lot of people here in this community already know about it. They're using block EOS mainnet right now, and nobody cares. Their users don't care whether they're using blockchain. So that's a kind of abstraction which excites me. Like, EOS provides that kind of options, and we are running these real world apps which are using blockchain. I think moonlighting is still, if you go to DApp Radar, do check out. If you remove the categories like gaming and so on, and the gambling, if you check the others section, moonlighting has been on the top, running on EOS, and no other blockchain, even across any blockchain. Forget about EOS. It's about Ethereum or any other blockchain. They are they are on top based on number of users, while they all their users are not even using the native account. They are using virtual accounts. So in reality, their actual number of users are 4 times of what DAppRadar is showing. But even then, they are currently number one. So I think I can't stress enough on how much usable EOS is versus any other chain. even at this early stage, even before we have reached the full potential. So there is no doubt that we are on the right track from that perspective. So that's what I would end with. And I hope that people are looking at the technology progress before listening to how this whole thing is a mess. And yes, in as I again I would repeat this thing that in a decentralized world, if you don't have a mess, that means it's not decentralized enough. Chaos is the definition of decentralized world, and if you are not allowing that chaos, you will not see innovation happening. And that's the always the power of decentralized communities, where you have this kind of chaos. So again, happy new year to everybody. I'm sorry for my voice and bad quality, because I'm kind of still recovering from a very bad cold, and I think I'm still not speaking fine. So I hope I was audible and understandable. Um, have a great year. Do let us know. Do engage with us on Twitter, on Telegram. The links are there on the channel right here. Do like this. I'm hearing that YouTube is making changes to the algorithms, and they even booted out some of the people. So do set up notifications and like the videos. So hopefully that will keep us engaged, so that we you don't lose our videos whenever we post new videos or whenever we do this live streams. So do um, uh, put subscribe, and the bell icon or whatever YouTube tools are available, and we will try to keep coming back and talk to you. And it was always great getting the feedback. I love these live streams. I wish I could do more. But as I said, we are very active on Telegram and Twitter, and it's very difficult to set up a time for this live streams. And just wanted to do this at the start of the new year and share my thoughts and interact with the community. So thank you once again. Bye for now, and just keep the hope alive. This is a new tech. It needs a lot of effort from you, and don't only speculate. Don't try to be an investor. It's too early perhaps to be an investor. It's a time for developers. It's a time for building, and at some point I think investors will be rewarded. But that's where I think the speculation is, which nobody knows, and that's where I think I'm not trying to contribute to that part of it. What I can tell you is that I'm very excited about the tech, and this world is here to stay. Thank you. Bye bye.